What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the 5th studio album by Miley Cyrus. I didn't know she had 5 studio albums. This is crazy. I was thinking maybe paired up with her Hannah Montana discography, but apparently I'm just out of the loop. She has 5 solo albums. This new one is called Younger Now, and I was actually pretty excited for it considering she's reinvented herself once again, leaning back into her roots with a country pop sound. And it's something that actually sounds pretty nice as a whole. It's very refreshing, and it's a nice change of pace for pop music in general. I would love to see this album do well, even if I'm not 100% sold on every song. We'll get into it more as the review progresses. So, I think this is the last album that I really expected Miley to release, especially after Bangers, a more hip-hop and electronic-dominated project that just saw her going off the deep end. She was going through her wild phase then, and obviously the music videos, the nudity, the photo shoots, everything like that. She was basically shedding that Hannah Montana image, and obviously the drug use and stuff like that was really flowing heavily during that time, and with Miley Cyrus and her Dead Pets in 2015. An unredeemable project in my eyes. It's something that is so bad that we're just gonna pretend it didn't exist, because there were like 2 good songs on there in my opinion. I loved One Son, Karen Don't Be Sad, and especially that performance at SNL, that was fantastic. But beyond that, there were so many songs, it just felt like psychedelic rock for beginners. It's like you heard 3 psychedelic songs and you grabbed the Flaming Lips and were like, let's make an album. But Miley is now sober. She is weed free at this point. I don't even think she's drinking, and it's something where it's really kind of cool to see how the singer who said that she couldn't be tamed has kind of been tamed, and she's simmering down at this point, and she's settling into this more folky and traditional sound. And yes, she does still curse on some of these songs. She brings in her persona, and I like that. Obviously, she's still Miley. Oh, she's just being Miley, as See You Again said. And I think it is really cool to see her also performing some of these older songs like See You Again, Party in the USA live, because she did that at a BBC Radio 1 lounge performance, and she actually had a whole stage outside. It was fantastic. The Younger Now title track performance was phenomenal. Sounds even better than the studio quality because her vocals sound that great. But I like how she's taking this new sound, putting some new twists on her old songs, and it seems like she's no longer embarrassed of her roots, and I feel like that's what Younger Now, the title track, is all about. And throughout this record, I feel like there's recollections of love, of life, and a lot of loss, and also some clinginess, some fights, and a lot of love songs, and that does bring it down in places. It gets a little bit too much and excessive and somewhat bloated, but one thing I have to say is that through and through, the instrumentals are pretty tight-knit here as a whole. They're not always doing something that's pushing the mold, but at the same time, it's almost refreshing to see somebody actually dedicating themselves to going back, exploring their roots, talking to their father, who was in country music, Billy Ray Cyrus, for so long, getting advice from him, from her godmother, even featuring her godmother Dolly Parton on a track called Rainbowland. And while that song is by no means one of my favorites, in fact, it's probably my least favorite on the entire project, don't hate me, but it's one of those songs that feels so traditional, so almost bluegrass leaning, that I really can't get on board with it. Maybe I was just taken to one too many bluegrass festivals with my parents as a kid against my will. You see, the nice thing about Younger Now as an album is the fact that it does play itself as cheesy a lot of the time, and the lyrics are very simple, easy to interpret, but it doesn't need to be too bloated or excessive or flashy to really get the job done. What works here is the simplicity for Cyrus and the way that she plays off of her backing band. Some of these have great instrumentals on them, like I was talking about, and there's a charge to tracks like Thinkin, where she's kind of talking about how she doesn't have this trust with somebody and how she's always getting inside of her own head. And then Love Someone, where she's actually quite bitter at somebody that she has cut off in the past, or even Miss You So Much, where she opens up about somebody that she lost. I think it was a friend of a friend that OD'd, and she kind of opens up on a track that seemingly might be a love song or, you know, just wanting to be with somebody, but she talks about everyone from this person to her grandmother who hasn't even passed away yet, but she's like, how can I miss you so much, but you're still here with me? I haven't even lost you. We're still together right now, but how do I already miss you? Malibu did a great job at kicking off this album and kind of capitalizing on that sound that she was really wanting to hone in on. It showed people what she was going to do with future music, but it didn't force it down people's people's throats the fact that it was so country or country pop, because it has a little bit of that twang to it. It has a little bit of that folky feel, but it's not so overtly so that it's going to turn people off. And I think that that's why this song saw mainstream success. And I think that Malibu is very endearing. It's very sincere. She wrote this track for Liam Hemsworth, her actual fiance in real life, somebody who she broke up with originally. I think he called off the engagement the first time, but they're back together, I think engaged again at this point, and she's writing a song for him that she never thought that she would write. And I think that many of these songs come from that point of view and where her heart is at now, where her mind is focused on love, and obviously all of these other reflections such as jealousy as well. And I think that Malibu is a song where everything is going right, and as we progress through this album, I think that she kind of sees all of these issues, whether it be her own self falling apart or else she's looking into somebody else's life. I think that we get a lot of reflection and solid commentary, even if some of the lyrics are a bit basic. At the very end of this record, we get another very cool song that I'm definitely enjoying. It is the most country-tinged one, I would say, alongside, obviously, Rainbowland with Dolly Parton. I already said that I don't like that one, but it closes out on Inspired. It was released as a promotional single. I didn't really listen to it at that time. I heard it like once or twice, and I didn't think too much of it, but listening to it in the context of this record, it makes sense. It closes this album out, and it's a reflection. It sees her talking about simpler times, and it's also very uplifting. It was written for, I think, a couple of different communities. Hillary Clinton was mentioned whenever she talked about writing this song, and I like that even though I think that she did have her own personal agenda when writing it, it doesn't bleed through too much, and we need, I think, more of that in music, where I just don't feel like I'm being fed one thing or another, and I like that with Younger Now as a whole. It starts off with a track where she talks about how she's not afraid of who she was, and about how she's going to move forward. A very strong guitar and drum-led song. I love the peppy drums on that one, especially during the chorus. She then concludes this album by talking about how she now feels inspired in spite of all of these things that she's been through, maybe it be a bad relationship or something that she's seen that's really distracted her. I think Inspired does a great job of pushing this country sound, but also putting Cyrus's voice at the forefront, because she does sound very strong here. Let's quickly talk about some of these individual tracks, especially ones in the middle that I haven't really touched on all that much. Miss You So Much is one that I definitely enjoy, although it does get a bit monotonous and blends together with some of the other ones right in the middle of this record as you give it repeated listens. I think Weak Without You definitely stands out though. That one comes just before the aforementioned track, and this one does a great job of kind of pushing something that is kind of cheeky, a little bit cheesy and fun, but at the same time she talks about like how she's going to live her life if she had to live a week without this person that she's involved with. And I think that it kind of talks about how obviously she would go out, she would round up the girls, that sort of thing. But the main thing is, even though it is predictable, it's still fun. And whenever you can say that about a Miley Cyrus track, especially one that is in a total different genre than what you're used to, I think it's only spelling good things for her. Love Someone just sounds badass. I love the kind of riveting guitar that definitely shimmers on this one, and some kind of punchy vocals and drums that really line up for a great combination. And then we get a track like Thinkin that I already kind of touched on briefly, but I really like that one. It might just be my favorite song on the entire project. I really like the fact that it comes through with such a strong chorus, and just the way that the song is set up. The vocals feel unique here, unique not only to this album, but to her in general. I do feel like this album feels a bit excessive in places, especially right towards the middle of the record. It's not that these songs are bad that she's cooking up, it's just that she's serving up stuff that feels serviceable, done before, or just kind of middle of the road, not too offensive one way or the other, not really bad, not really good whatsoever. It just feels like I've heard these songs. And Weak Without You has traces of that. It gets a little bit worse on Miss You So Much, even though I like the message of the song. And then I Would Die For You just feels way too over the top and dramatic for me. It doesn't really reach that climax. She doesn't sell the melodrama that the track might entail with a title like that. So for me, it's kind of a bummer right in the middle of this album. Whatever, it's starting to feel lengthy. Even though it's only like 42 minutes long, it still feels a little bit bloated right in that midsection. But it does have plenty of other songs standing around it that do stand tall and kind of make you forget about those other moments. It's just that they don't totally eclipse it, and whenever you're listening through this project, some of it might get a bit too tedious stays for you with repeated plays. Younger Now is a pretty solid album all in all, and I'm really excited to see how fans respond to it and how it just commercially performs. I hope that it does well for Cyrus because it is kind of a risky and bold move. You're not going to find really any modern traces on this album. I mean, there's a few, I think, drum machines that pop up, but they're very minimal. I think that they're tastefully used. For the most part, you're looking at raw drums. I think that I heard a jug on one track. That is like Rainbowland. I'm talking about like the stuff from the Andy Griffith Show where those like wild hillbillies would come in and actually play the jug. I'm pretty sure I heard that going in the background of that track, and it scared me a little bit. But other than that, I like the instrumentation, how varied and just kind of country leaning it is, because it reminds me of my own roots. So for Younger Now, I think that it could have a decent shelf life. I think you guys are definitely going to want to check this out. And don't just judge Miley because you've seen her do one or two things in the past that you didn't like. Give the music a chance. You might actually like it. For me personally, I'm going to give this a solid 3.5 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts on Younger Now in the comments section down below. Please drop a like on the video while you're here, and if you're able to, please support me on Patreon. It's the top link in the description, or else there's an annotation floating in the corner of the screen. You can tap right here for my last Miley Cyrus review or another recent review that I did right here. Socials in the description, and I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.